Hello and welcome to our Skills for Success seminar. Tonight, we are excited to bring you a presentation about how to get the highest grade possible. If you want to be exemplary in your classwork, this is the place to be. So we welcome you into this space, and we hope that tonight you will get a lot of insight and wisdom about how to get the highest grade possible in your discussion forums and for your assignments. My name is Tara Lopez. I am a student success manager, and I am joined tonight by Dr. Craig Brewer, our assistant dean. And we have a lot of great information for you. So why don't we go ahead and just dive on in. Let's see here. One of the things that we want to say is there are two key skills we're going to impart to you tonight about how to get the highest grade in your classes. And really, the first is understanding the assignment. So Dr. Brewer is going to walk you through how to read the instructions and how to use the rubric as a planning tool to make sure that you know where every point is going to be allocated before you spend your energy and effort on the research and the writing. You want to know that going in. And the second key skill that we're going to highlight for you tonight is understanding the feedback. I don't know if you know, but it is one of the most essential elements, especially in online learning, but it's true in every learning environment. The feedback is the thing that you are essentially paying tuition for. You could go to the public library and get a lot of the same information that you get in a class that has been carefully curated for you, but you wouldn't have someone to guide you through it. You wouldn't have someone to hone your thinking or challenge you with critical thinking questions. And that's what feedback is. And so your LAPU professors go to great lengths and spend a great deal of time giving you good feedback. And in this seminar tonight, we are going to equip you and empower you to find the grade, which most of you probably know how to do, but we want you to find all the feedback, and we want you to find the feedback file if there is one. So these are tools, skills you're going to leave in your hand tonight, ready to put to work in your class one click away. So there's 3 tools that you can use to accomplish those things. And the first one is the syllabus. The second one is each assignment page. And the third one is the graded feedback from the instructor. So that's 3 different layers and 3 different touch points for you to see what's required and know how to hit that target. It's the difference between looking at a bullseye that is in plain view or looking at a bullseye that has a blanket over the top of it. If you're not looking into the syllabus, you don't know what the bullseye is. If you're not looking at the assignment page, you don't know where the target's at. If you're not looking at the graded feedback, you don't know how to make an adjustment to get just a little closer to center next time. And so I want to show you something that's not going to be covered anywhere else in this seminar about the syllabus. I hope that in every class that you're taking, the syllabus is something that you step in and read. I've showed you where to find it. Within your class, there's always a folder called Course Resources. And when you click on that, you'll notice it opens up into a new page that lists a million course resources particular to each class that you're in, but the syllabus is always the top link on that page. And when you click that, then you will see so much information. But if you go all the way down to the bottom under additional items, there is a syllabus for every single assignment that you're going to complete in this class. So I've given you a very tiny screenshot because it's a lot of information. It doesn't fit on a slide very well. But this is what it looks like in an assignment rubric for the discussion forums. And it shows you there are 4 categories of points available, how many points are within each one of those categories. So you never have to guess, what do you get points for? You can see the breakdown and the specific requirements for every single point and where it's going. So if you haven't made use of the syllabus yet, I would strongly encourage you to make that a habit in every class that you participate in, because those are things you can know before you get ready. Dr. Brewer is going to take us through the assignment page, and then I'll take us through the grading feedback. And we're going to do that loop for you through a discussion submission, and then we're going to repeat it for an assignment submission. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Brewer.
Thank you so much, Tara. Let me just start by saying it's a blessing to be able to connect with you as a student here at LAPU, and as a faculty member. We are here for you. We want to come alongside you. We want to see you succeed. And so just want to encourage you in that. Tara had mentioned, the rubric, and we have discussion instructions. So when you're looking at doing a paper, you start oftentimes with the discussion instructions, but that's not going to give you the full target. You're going to end up missing a piece. And so as we heard earlier, you could go into the syllabus, you click on that, you look at the rubric. Oftentimes there are requirements in the rubric that you may not see in the assignment instructions. And so again, I just want to encourage you to do that. The reason why we use rubrics at LAPU is because it's a best practice in higher education. What rubrics do is they help us to be as objective as we can in terms of grading. They help students to have a clear expectation of what we expect from them, assuming that students have the opportunity to access that and review that. And so again, it's a very important tool for you that I just want to encourage you to make sure you're reviewing. In terms of the discussion instructions, these are pretty similar across the board for most of our courses. We try to create some continuity for the discussions so that as students go from one course to the next course, there's similarity in that. And so I'm talking about Psych 105. That's the example that I'm using. I'm teaching that class this term, Intro to Psychology. But for the purpose of the discussion, it's going to be pretty similar across the board for most of your courses. We typically use very similar prompts. So the first thing you see there is post a substantive response. And so a lot of students say, what does substantive mean? Please help me understand that word. What that means is comprehensive. We're looking for a comprehensive response for that initial post. And so some students have asked me in the past, well, how many words is that? And my response to that is it depends. It depends how clearly and succinctly you write. So there's no special word count, but I will give you a range. Oftentimes, I'm looking for the initial discussion to be somewhere around 300 words or 250 words, somewhere in that range. If you've only got 50 words, you probably don't have enough in that initial discussion in order to earn a high score. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. And the second piece of the discussion is engaging with peers in terms of their ideas and whatnot. So you've got your original post, and then you've got the post to peers. And so one of the important things I want to clarify too about discussions is most times we don't allow students to make up discussions. And the reason for that is because this is where you have the opportunity to get feedback and engage with your peers. And so if you're not able to get in there by Sunday, unfortunately, your peers aren't going to get that input and feedback that you could have given them, and the engagement doesn't happen there. And so we really want to encourage you to remain in the discussion and just remain active in that to engage with your peers. A few things to look at in the forums is spelling and grammar errors. I'll talk about that. There's a section of the rubric that looks at APA writing, and if you have errors there, you're going to get marked down a little bit typically. And then, like I said, reading the discussion rubric. So let's go to the next slide, Tara. I wanted to show you this is an example of a discussion. So this is the discussion one in the Psych 105 class, and just to share with you as an example. And so when I'm looking at these posts, I'd mentioned 300 words as being kind of in the right range for an initial discussion. This one's 261 or 81 words. So they're in the right range. The other thing I want to point out is if you see that percentage right there, that 25%, what that means is that's Turnitin. So we have Turnitin connected to the discussion to let you know as a student if what you're submitting has a very high similarity rate. So please always click on that. At 25%, it may not be an issue, but it may mean that you relied too heavily on quotes in some cases, but when you click on the Turn It In report, it will show you exactly your submission, and it'll highlight the areas that are the same as somewhere that information may have been pulled from. So I encourage you to look at that. If your number is really high, if you have a 50 or 60% there, I encourage you to, really do a deep dive. We use a color coding on that. So this one, we go green, yellow, red. If you anything red or even yellow, I would take a look at that. And oftentimes for our students, the struggle is in paraphrasing. And we're all guilty of this. Even when I attempt to paraphrase, oftentimes I might use too many words from the original author. And if I don't change enough of those words, I made an attempt, but I'm not really paraphrasing. And so therefore it really ought to be in quotes. So I just want to highlight that for you. Now, on the student sample, what you can see here is you can see the student wrote the post. And as a faculty member who's grading this, for the initial post, I'm looking at critical thinking. And you can see the criteria here. And for exemplary, it says presents an analysis, evaluation, or synthesis on the topic in a comprehensive and insightful manner, delivering all relevant information necessary for full understanding. That's a big ask, and all relevant information means that in order to meet that requirement, you're going to have to use resources. You don't have to use APA for citing your resources necessarily in the discussion, but you do have to give credit where credit is due. And so what I'm looking for there on that initial post is, was there a reference that the student referred to? I'm not so concerned about APA, but I want to see that, in order to provide that full understanding, as a student, you want to be able to pull from, one or two references to provide that context. So if a student doesn't have any references, it's not likely that they're going to meet exemplary for this category. And I know it doesn't say necessarily, that per se. And so that, again, this is why we're having the conversation, just to help you understand a little bit about what we're looking at as faculty. And so on this one, I rated it as accomplished. You can see that above. If students are accomplished, usually that's a B grade, and there's nothing wrong with a B grade and accomplished. But my role as a faculty member is always, as Tara said, I want to give you the feedback and input that you need to improve. I want to prepare you for the next paper. And so my goal always with the rubric is to say, hey, these are some things you did really great on, and here's a couple areas where you can improve in order to earn more points. I often use the language exemplary. I might say you accomplished all the goals for the assignment. If you want to earn a score of exemplary for the next assignment, these are some things I encourage you to do in order to improve upon your score. And so we're looking now at the second phase of that rubric. If you wouldn't mind just going back really quickly.
Oh, sorry about that.
Sarah. Okay, so we've got critical thinking as the first piece. Let's go to the second one. We've got writing mechanics. And so with the writing mechanics, it's out of a total of 4 points. So on the discussion, it's not a huge number of points that we attribute to the writing mechanics. It's far more important to us that you're demonstrating critical thinking skills. That's where most of the points are in the discussion. So oftentimes students might reach out to me and say, hey, I've got, my post I want to do, but it's not perfect grammatically, and I think I might have some errors, and I'm not sure if I want to submit it. And my response is, please submit it and meet that deadline. And even if there's a couple things that are off, you might lose a point or two, but you're going to be in a much better position than if you don't meet that deadline and then you end up having a late penalty. And so I just want to provide you with that context. We're really much more focused on the critical thinking skills than we are. And that's why we only attribute 4 points to this in the discussion. However, it's important that you learn the writing mechanics piece, because in your assignments, and we'll talk about assignments, it's worth more points. And again, the intent there is we really want to prepare students for career success. We believe it's important that students have strong writing skills and can come out of LAPU and go into a work environment and be able to really perform and write and submit. And so we also have heard from employers that that's an important skill set that they're looking for in their employees. They want to hire employees who have, strong writing skills. And so we do emphasize that. So on this particular one, on the writing mechanics, as you can see there, it also looks at use of APA, citations, scholarly sources. And so on this one, I think I rated the student as a 3, meaning that in general, they were doing, okay, but there's a few errors in there. If you look at that, you might look at the 1.2 on the first paragraph. If you look down to the fourth line from the bottom, you see reading 1.2 history of psychology, and then a colon and a number of authors. So that, for the purpose of discussion, I'm really happy that the student used a reference. So I'm happy to have that. But for APA purposes, that's not exactly how you should quote. So it would look different if it was done in APA. So usually I would tell the student, hey, I'm glad you used that reference. That's great. In the future, I encourage you to you to work on your APA and your format, and so you can earn more points. It won't be so heavy in terms of points for the discussion, but it will be for the assignments. And so we use the discussion as one way to prepare students for their assignments so that they'll be more successful with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we have post appears, and I want to provide a little context for this. I oftentimes get students who reach out to me and say, hey, I responded to 2 peers. How come I didn't get the full 6 points? And if you look at the rubric on engagement, in order to get exemplary, you have to do more than 2 posts, meaning 3 responses. And so in the assignment instructions, though, it says, 2. And so students say, well, in assignments instructions said 2. Well, yes, 2 meets the requirement, but if you want a score of exemplary and you want that, additional point, you need to respond to more than 2, and you need to exceed that. For the post appears, I want to just talk about a few key things to remember. First of all, word count, again, it depends on how you write and how concise you are, but in general, I would say you want to be in the range of 150 words, somewhere in that range. If your response to a peer is only 20 words, you probably didn't provide enough input and feedback there to them to get a high score. So again, I encourage you just to look at that. If you look at the rubric here, I talked about engagement, but contribution to discussion, I really want to highlight this for you as well. The contribution for discussion, this really gets at what are you bringing to your peers that's going to provide more depth of learning. And so when it comes to contribution to discussion, we talk about that. Accomplishing that is essentially when you provide new perspectives or alternative points of view, but that might be underdeveloped, right? So again, if a student's providing a different perspective, but it's not necessarily a full argument and they didn't necessarily include a reference, that might be accomplished. But for exemplary, you would absolutely want to include a reference or something to provide more depth to the learning. And again, that's what we're looking at as faculty. We want to see students provide resources and connect with one another, so it provides more depth of learning and we all learn together. So that really is our goal, and that's why we have this as one of the categories. And so I just encourage you, when you're doing your post to peers, think about, how am I going to add something to this to provide more depth or to help them potentially see it in a different way? Is there a resource that I might be able to pull in? A lot of our students do an amazing job of encouraging one another and supporting one another. And that is so important. And so please continue to do that. In addition to that, though, for purposes of grading, we're really looking at pulling in resources and ways just to help us think about things in different and unique ways.
Can I add something to that, Craig?
Absolutely.
I just want to say, I also am an adjunct professor. So not only do I manage from student success, but I get to teach many of you. And it is the best, most profound moment of insight when students can grab something from the reading that complements something that another student has said. Because as you may have discovered, there's quite a lot of reading in college. It's hard to pay 100% attention to everything all the time. In fact, I'm pretty sure no one can. But what you hope is these key ideas, they land and they hit you in a different way than they hit your classmate. But when that knowledge comes from them and then from you, and you guys say, oh, and your post made me remember on page 33 where the author said this, then what you're doing is creating real energy around this particular idea that each of you are seeing from a different perspective. And so that's what contributions to discussion mean. You're enriching the thinking, you're deepening the understanding, and basically making it a better experience for everybody in the room. So I think that's when it gets exciting, doesn't it, Dr. Brewer?
Absolutely. And you articulated it so well, Tara, just about the importance of that piece and just connecting the learning with one another.
Would you like me to take over the grading feedback view for this now, or do you
Sure,
have
that
other
would be
things to
great.
say? Okay. So this is the part where we move out of the assignment instructions, out of the syllabus and what the professor has been thinking, and we move you into having that snapshot into your professor's brain. Really, that's what feedback is. This person who's an expert in this material is giving you a glimpse into their brain, and we want you to see the whole thing. So I want to make sure you know how to find your grades and that feedback. Right here, you can see I'm on the page within the week 1 folder, inside the discussion forum for week 1. And this is where you would, normally have scrolled down and looked at the spot where you're going to put your post. But if you don't skip it, you can click on View Grades. See that gray button right there? It's an orange circle. That is the key way to see all the feedback. Now, many of you may be accustomed to clicking, if you look just a little to the left, right above where week 1 is highlighted in blue, you can see it says grades. You can click there to see your grade book. But what you will miss if you click there is all of the specific syllabus rubric feedback that Dr. Brewer has just been speaking about. And so you can see that, but I want to show you this view grades option. What happens when you click there is that a box pops up and you can see that this grade was awarded a 15 points, a 37.5%. It's not very high. You want to know why. You know, maybe you know already, but it's really helpful to look. And so my screenshot is a little limited. Please forgive that. But you can notice out of the critical thinking score, you can now see 15 out of 18 points. That's in that, I think it's probably just below accomplished. You got just a little bit more of a reach to get to hit that really exemplary critical thinking. And then you can see there are comments, and I'm sorry they got cut off a little bit, but there's some feedback there that says you really want to focus on drawing out perspectives that challenge the conventional thinking or the assumptions on the topic. And so that's one way you can enhance the critical thinking. And I think that feedback is worth its weight in gold. That is the stuff you need to know, because the most percentage of points in this rubric come from critical thinking. But then you can also see the engagement score was a 0 out of 6. And if I could scroll down, I can't because it's a screenshot, but if I could scroll down, you would see that it says needed to respond to at least 2 of your classmates. And that would have given you a score of 5 or 6 if you had done those things. And so you can go down each section of the rubric with feedback to see exactly what to do next time to get a higher score. And it's not, I mean, we want you to do the learning. You know, we're educators, so we're not interested in helping you, you know, just get more points. We like it when you get more points, but we like it when you get more points because you have more understanding. And so we hope that's encouraging to you. That view grades button is everything. Make sure that you're making use of that. All right, back over to you, Dr. Brewer.
Thank you so much. So assignment instructions rubric. And so what I want to do is to demystify the grading process. I want to just take you through a process just to see what that looks like. So the example that we're looking at is for Psych 105, it's part 1, defining life-changing events. And my apologies for putting so much on a slide. So typically we don't encourage students to do that. I had a hard time figuring out how best to get all this content to you. But again, I want to just show you, when you look at the assignment requirements here, you can see that there are quite a few assignment requirements. And on this particular one, we go through, personal life challenges. We talk about individual characteristics. Number 3, describe the assumed perspectives. 4, how were others involved? How might they have felt? 5, preconceived notions. And I'm reading these to you because you're going to see these in the rubric. These are the exact same categories that we're going to get to. So for some students, they may not answer all those questions. And if they don't answer one of those questions, that means they could get a 0 within that category in the rubric, and it could have a really negative impact on their overall grade. So again, when you see the questions, please be sure to respond to those. Some other requirements here, you see that it's listed word count 400 to 600 words. That just gives you a sense of what the expectations are in terms of the paper, the assignment. So I encourage you to always look at that and see, where am I at word count wise in comparison to what the expectations are for the assignment. So let's move on to the next slide here. So I included just a snapshot here for you. Now, this is the rubric. So we looked at the assignment. Now we're looking at the rubric. As Tara said earlier, if you're looking for the rubric, you can always find it under your course resources, and the syllabus comes up first. Click on that, scroll down, and once you scroll down, you'll see each of the assignments that you have in the course, they will have a specific rubric that looks very similar to this. I couldn't fit the whole rubric on this page, but it gives you a sense. I want to just talk through the categories here. So we try to use a real developmental approach at LAPU, and you can see we've got different categories up here between beginning, developed, accomplished, and exemplary. And so in many cases, when I'm giving feedback to students, I'll let them know, you accomplished the goals for the assignment in order to, receive a grade of exemplary, or even if it might be beginning, saying, you did a nice job here. These are some things that you could do in order to improve for your next iteration. And so we're continuously trying to work with students to help them to make it to that next step in terms of what the expectations are. And as a student, you've got all of this. You can take a look at this. I encourage you, if you have as Tara said, you don't want to really start on the paper until you have the target, right? And so the target includes the assignment and the rubric. Once you start on that, though, I think going back to the assignment and the rubric and just checking, the students that I have that do that do really well, and they tend to meet all their requirements. And as Tara said, we really want students to learn, but we also want you to get good grades and score well and whatnot. And so just want to encourage you to take a look at that. Let's go on to the next piece here.
This is where, I think Dr. Brewer is going to walk us through actually the professor's process of grading. But before we do that, I'm going to show you where you will find his feedback once he's given it to you. So we're going to do this one a little bit in reverse, okay? When you are trying to find your grade for an assignment that is a little different, you'll notice this life event essay, it has a paper with a hand under it. That's an assignment. It's a file that you would attach and submit. And that's different than if you look above, like we were just in a discussion forum, you can see that looks like a chat box on top of a chat box. And that's because you type directly into a text box and click submit. And that's different than attaching a file. And you just see the rubrics a little differently for those. So we're going to look at what it is for an assignment. You click on the assignment page where I have circled, and then you'll see at the top submission status, and it'll tell you whether or not it was submitted for grading. It'll tell you whether or not it was graded. All of my boxes there are red because demo student turned in her assignment 3 days and 6 hours late, which is too late, by the way, to actually be eligible for credit unless you have made prior arrangements with your professor. So you got to be careful about that. But that box gives you a lot of information. The thing it doesn't give you is the feedback. And what you've got to do to get to that feedback from that same page is just scroll all the way down. And I think what's amazing is that when you do that, you can see the grade. And you'll notice this is laid out just like the syllabus is. So you see the description of the event is worth 20 points, and you see the score in the right-hand column that says 20 out of 20. And then in that column before the numbers, you'll see all the feedback that Dr. Brewer is about to walk us through and show us his process for developing. But you can see it from the assignment page where you turned it in if you just scroll all the way to the bottom. So helpful. Because this is the stuff, guys. This is the gold. This is everything to your growth, to your development, to your transformation as a student. I say to my students all the time, people do not show up to college to prove how much they already know. And so if there are points missing, you want to know why. You want to be able to get in there and add. You may have a great understanding of a topic, but if you haven't followed the instructions, then you're going to lose out on points. We want you to see with your eyes wide open what every point is for. It's not a mystery. It's not a secret sauce. It's not whether your professor likes you or not. It is literally right here on display for all the world to see in a syllabus, and then in your private feedback page, not on display for the world to see. So with that in mind, I'd like to stop sharing for a minute and hand controls over to Dr. Brewer. Are you ready to start sharing your screen?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You guys are getting a peek behind the curtain here. This is what the professors see when they go in to grade your papers. So wow, you have gotten VIP passes tonight. Aren't you glad you prioritized this particular seminar?
Thank you, Tara. So as Tara was saying earlier, you see description of events. And so I'm just going to take you through it. So as an instructor, I see the paper on the left, I'm scrolling down, I'm reading, I've got a rubric on the right, and it has a point values. And so for this particular example, this paper, and there's a link to the paper too in the presentation that you can look at as well. What you'll see on that is the student did an exemplary job of sharing details about the event. So the first criterion was, describe the event. And so for that, it was exemplary, very thorough. So 20 points you can see there was and the comment that I provided was exemplary job. And then again, so I'm giving a comment within the feedback box. So you wouldn't necessarily see this as a student unless like you did what Tara had suggested. You've got to take an extra step to get to this single box to see the feedback that's listed here. The next one is description of characteristics. And on this one, in this particular story, if you look at the submission, the student accomplished the goal. They talked about the individual characteristics of those involved in the event, but it wasn't at the point of exemplary. It was accomplished. They discussed it, but they didn't go into too much depth about those characters. And so you'll see the feedback that I'm giving is I encourage you to provide more details about the characters in your story. If there had been more details, they would have scored exemplary on that. So they got 17 out of 20. By the way, this is a B paper. So this student got an 85%. This is a good paper. They did the fundamentals, they accomplished the goals, but they didn't get exemplary in a lot of the categories. So it wasn't like it was above and beyond. And so for exemplary, we're looking at, again, really students going into much more depth. So on this second one, you can see assumed perspectives. That was really about the assumed perspectives of the people involved in the incident. The student discussed it and provided an overview, so it was addressed, it was described, but there wasn't a great amount of detail in that. And so again, in that case, they accomplished the goal. Description of other feelings is another example. I don't know that the student really did much to try to describe the feelings that she thought others might be having, a little bit of that, but it wasn't in too much depth. And so again, accomplished, and you see my feedback. I encourage you to provide more detail. And so if you don't go into that next step, you're not going to see the comments under each of the boxes here. And I'm just going to scroll down. I did the same thing throughout, and I just want to highlight a couple things here. So on the APA, let me include that. So control of syntax, mechanics, and APA format. So I mentioned on the discussion, that's not worth that many points, but on your papers, oftentimes it will have more of an impact. And so we want to prepare students for that. In this case, you see the first sentence there. If you watch any movie about high school, you will see. That's not writing in third person. And so APA requires third person. So I put if one versus if you. So it should have been if one watches a movie about high school, then one might. And again, writing in the third person is part of APA. I also gave feedback, avoid informal language. They had HMM listed in the paper submission. And then please remember to use a reference page. The student provided a reference, which is great, but they didn't have a reference page. So I gave them accomplish. They used language that conveyed the meaning. There's some errors, but overall, I think they did a good job and they accomplished it. And my hope is that the feedback that I'm giving here will help them the next time they do this to get a score of exemplary. And let me just take you to the feedback box at the bottom. This is my feedback to demo student. I say, hi, demo student. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm sorry to hear about how you were stereotyped as a result of being from Compton. Thank you for openly sharing about the stereotypes you held. Excellent job of using Erickson to describe identity versus confusion. And so I'll provide students with some feedback there about the content of their paper, but then also about grading. And so in my experience, oftentimes students want to know both. They say, I don't want to just hear about my APA, my writing. I want to know your feedback about the content. And so I provide content feedback. And then the second piece I put in regard to grading, you accomplish the goals for every category in the rubric. For a grade of exemplary, I encourage you to provide more detail and depth to your responses. And so that you can see that feedback in general here, but if you just get the general one, you're not going to see more specific that I included higher up on the rubric. And so again, for many students, they may not drill down that far. And so this might be all that the students look at as a summary comment. So I want to make sure I have enough there for students in the summary comment. So as you can see, I included some of the same comments because I'm just, again, want to provide this information in as many ways as I can so that students have access to it. As Tara said, this is the key. This is why you're here at LEPU. It's faculty, sharing their expertise with you and wisdom and really pouring into you to help you be successful. And so I think that hopefully that's a good highlight of the process as faculty that we go through. So we're looking at the rubric, we're looking at the assignment, we're being as objective as we can. We're looking at the content of what you're saying, but also the writing. And again, all those different variables as we go through the process.
Absolutely. I think I'm going to take this opportunity then to share my screen, because then you can see rather than just the screenshots and now with a little more context, exactly what it looks like for you to go in and see all of that feedback. So I'm in the life event essay assignment page, and this is where I would have submitted it as well as read all the instructions. And keep scrolling down, and then you'll see that section I told you about, submission status, and you'll notice it's been submitted. It has been graded. If the professor hasn't graded it yet, it will say not graded. And that way you know the difference between what you just don't have a grade for yet versus what you have already got what you need to grow from. And if you keep scrolling down, this is all what you have done. This is your file that you submitted. And any comments that you might have made. Students don't often use this box, and that's fine. It's not required at all. But this is where you would make changes. A word of caution about that, don't. Like if you submit it and then try to go in and resubmit it, it'll overwrite your date stamp and it might be 5 days late and you won't be eligible for credit. So once you submit something, count it as done. It is in stone, and don't go back and resubmit or edit it because it will not go well for you. I don't recommend it. But here you begin to see this section called feedback, and the feedback section is here. I showed you that itty bitty screenshot, but now you can see all of the things of 20 out of 20 points for this part, 17 out of 20 for descriptions of characteristics, 24 out of 30 for assumed perspectives, and then all of the feedback to help you know exactly what they want you to do differently next time. Because most of our classes have assignments that build on one another. And so you want to really take it to heart. You're not doing very, very different assignments from week to week. Usually it's kind of phase 1 and then phase 2 and then phase 3 leading up to your final signature assignment. And that's intentional because we want you to feel that stair-step improvement each time. So then we get down, if you can go all the way to the bottom, not only do you get section by section comments from your prof, but down here at the bottom, here is the general feedback that Dr. Brewer has also left. And so, as you can see, this is the most comprehensive view. I want to show you how different it looks if you only click on grades. If you just click on this box over here that says grades, it will take you to your grade book. And there aren't very many grades entered for demo students, so don't fret. They're going to be fine. I believe in them. But what you can see here is on that discussion forum post, got a 45% because they didn't contribute to the discussion at all. They did their one major post with some decent critical thinking, but the engagement really, really matters in contributing to the discussion. So that was a big loss. And then here we'll scroll down to see the assignments, and this is what you see, the 85 on that really good paper that got submitted. And then here is that generalized statement, but you don't see all of the sections of the rubric where that rich specific feedback was given. So this is an okay view, and it's a great 30,000 foot view to see how you're doing in the class overall. And so we're going to start to wrap up our time together tonight, but I want to use this opportunity to say, if you use this grade report, or this like grade book view, it's great. It's a really good big picture way to strategize. Sometimes you might say, oh my gosh, my life is just too busy this week. Something's got to give. What can I jettison? What can I let go of? And you can say, well, my appointments or my assignments this week are 40 points. And then I've got this paper that's 200 points. Well, I definitely can't miss that. If I have to give up something this week, I'm going to have to give up the discussion forum, and that's 40 points. It's 4% of my grade. I can make that up. I can live with that. You can't make it up, but you can live with that. You know, it's not going to tank you. And sometimes being an adult learner and getting the best grades means also balancing in strategic ways what you're actually capable of doing and letting good enough be good enough. And so I know you're here tonight because you wanted to get the highest grade possible, but I'm telling you, there is a place for strategy and there's a place for self-care. If you are ever thinking there's no possible way, I can't get caught up, there's nothing I can do, here's what I want you to do. Call your success coach. And they're going to look at where you're at with you. They're going to look at this page with you. And they're going to say, okay, what are we going to make top priority tonight? Do you have 2 hours tonight? What can we do tonight? And they'll help you strategize and break it down into chunks so that you can handle it. We are all committed to your success. Your professors want to see you succeed. Your success coach wants to see you succeed. The university wants to see you succeed. And we hope that in attending this seminar tonight, you feel more empowered. You've been given a tool to read a rubric, to plan how you're going to build a paper, and how you're going to harvest all the good that's in that feedback your professors are giving you. Dr. Brewer, do you want to offer any last words of encouragement to our students tonight?
Absolutely. Let me just echo Tara's comment. We are here. We are for you. We are with you. We want to see you succeed. So please reach out to your faculty too anytime you need clarification. It's such a blessing to have the opportunity to be able to connect with you here today. And I just want to encourage you in your studies at LAPU.
Well, I'm going to close this out in prayer, and then we're going to let you go. So this is your final warning to offer any questions in the chat if you have them. Would you bow your heads and pray with us? Father, we thank you for your loving kindness, for your faithfulness, Lord, for empowering us to develop the skills and the strengths you have already given us. Lord, I pray over these students that are attending this seminar, and I ask, Lord, that you would speak to them, each one, about the things you're developing in them. Father, I pray that you would give them a sense of strength to have the courage to read feedback. I know it can feel scary, but God, would you give them your peace? And would you allow them to find joy in the growth, Lord, not just in the destination, but in the transformation all along the way. I pray that they would feel your joy at their efforts, that they would feel your strength, giving them breath and life and thoughts that are clear. And I pray, Father, that you would just help continue to make LAPU an effective partner to these students as they pursue their dreams, their goals, their hopes for the life that you have called and equipped them for. We are grateful to be doing this together, God. I speak a blessing over these students tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you for coming. Have a fantastic day.